My name is David Greystone. I am 31 years old and grew up in the heart of the Midwest. Raised by hardworking parents with old-school American values, I was taught that your word mattered, that you earned what you got, and that you stood by the folks you loved. I lived by that, sometimes to my own downfall. Now, fast forward to the moment my world fell apart. My ex-wife Olivia ended up getting the better end of the deal by a mile. The judge gave her the right to stay in our house until both of our girls finished high school. I still had to pay the mortgage, the electric bill, the water, and everything else. She got half the value of the investment firm I built from scratch, and I was also on the hook for her car payments. On top of that, she walked away with 60% of everything we owned, our savings, stocks, retirement accounts, you name it. She got primary custody of our daughters, too. I got what the court calls standard visitation. That meant every other weekend in 2 weeks during the summer. Child support was set at $750 per child, which meant $1,500 every month out of my pocket. And because Olivia hadn't worked in over 5 years, she was granted spousal support, $2,000 every single month. The divorce would be finalized in 90 days unless I withdrew the petition. Judge Diana Thompson slammed her gavel like she was pounding a coffin shut. As she began to stand, I opened my mouth and let the frustration explode. Just one sarcastic sentence, but it lit the fuse. "I don't see what's so hard to understand," I muttered, loud enough for her to hear. "Want me to define it for you if you're struggling?" She snapped her head back toward me like I'd slapped her across the face. She sat back down slowly, her expression going from surprise to something between fury and disgust. "You have 1 minute to apologize, or I'll find you in contempt," she warned, face turning red. I didn't apologize. I said, "At least you'll get one decision right today." My attorney looked like he was going to have a heart attack, frantically rifling through his bag to find something, maybe a sedative or a sock to shove in my mouth. It was too late. She slammed her gavel again and hissed, "Want to see how much contempt you'll have after 30 days in jail?" I fired back, "Make it 60. Hell, go for 90. Maybe if you got laid once in a while, you'd be a little more pleasant to deal with." I shot both middle fingers in the air. "Use these to help with that." Yeah, that happened. She sentenced me to 90 days on the spot, her voice low and terrifying. I was dragged out by the bailiffs while the courtroom sat in stunned silence. My lawyer just stared at the floor, probably praying someone would invent a time machine. The next day, a letter from his firm said they were dropping me as a client. No surprise there. So, how did I get here? Like I said, I was raised right. Worked hard in school, got good grades, stayed out of real trouble, and earned a scholarship to college. I studied economics and minored in accounting. Got my MBA too. I took care of myself, stayed in shape, and was decent with women. I wasn't a saint, but I lived with intention. Then I met Olivia. She was a knockout. The kind of woman you notice the moment she walks into a room. Long brown hair, sharp eyes, a smile that made your heart stop. We met at a party, hit it off, and it went from there. Everyone noticed her. Even my friends said if I ever messed up, they'd be the first in line. A few of my lesbian friends joked they might try their luck too. Eventually, I proposed. She said yes. Olivia had a degree in art history but was working at a coffee shop. I used to joke she went to college for an MRS degree, basically looking for a husband instead of a career. After we tied the knot, she quit her job and stayed home full-time. I was doing well in the corporate world and making good money on the side trading stocks. We bought a nice 3-bedroom house and our sex life? Amazing. Everything was lining up perfectly. A few years into marriage, Olivia surprised me one evening with a huge grin on her face. "Get cleaned up," she said. "We're going out to celebrate, Daddy." "Wait, what did you just call me?" I asked. She beamed. "I'm pregnant. We'd been trying, but I still felt like I'd just been hit with a truck full of fireworks." I lifted her off her feet and kissed her face all over. We partied that night, knowing things would be different soon, but ready for it. Then came another surprise. Twins. 2 baby girls. I was over the moon. Could not wait to be their dad. When they arrived, I cried like a kid who dropped his ice cream. 2 healthy, beautiful daughters. I had everything I ever wanted. That moment changed me. I decided I didn't want to work 70-hour weeks at the company anymore. I had saved up a decent chunk of money, and I was good at managing investments. I got licensed and started my own firm. I already had friends and family I helped informally, so I asked them to come on as clients. Some folks from my old company followed, and in under a year, I was building something special. We had it all: love, family, a growing business, money in the bank. But like my dad always said, when you're standing on the mountaintop, the only way left to go is down. And I didn't realize how far down I'd fall not yet. When the girls got a little older, we threw them a big birthday bash. Both sides of the family showed up. Everything seemed perfect. Laughter, balloons, cake, the whole 9 yards. But what should have been a day to remember turned into the beginning of the end for me. I had just used the master bathroom. Our hallway one was taken. And as I was about to step out, I caught my mother talking quietly to her sister. They didn't know I was on the other side of the door. My mom was saying she could not figure out where our daughter's blue eyes came from. Her sister, Aunt Judy, joked that maybe she should just ask me. That's when my mother said something that damn near knocked the air out of my lungs. If he ever finds out those kids aren't his, it'll destroy him. He's so happy. I couldn't imagine what that would do to him. I froze. I backed up and locked the bathroom door again. My mind started racing. Surely they were mine, weren't they? Maybe I was overreacting. Someone in either family must have had blue eyes, right? Except my eyes are brown, muddy, dark brown. Olivia's are hazel. I ran through every relative in my mind. Only cousin Sarah had anything remotely close to blue eyes, and she got hers from her dad's side, which has no blood relation to me. On Olivia's side, I couldn't think of a single one. I forced myself to pull it together and made it back to the party. Smiled, shook hands, took pictures, all while dying inside. I barely remember the rest of the day. That night, as I tucked the girls in, I studied their faces. Bits of Olivia were there, but nothing of me, not a hint. While Olivia napped the next day, I started putting a plan together. I used the company credit card to order some items to my office, discreetly, so no invoices would show up at the house. I also started researching private investigators. I needed to know if I was crazy or if everything I loved was based on a lie. A few days later, I met with a firm called Elite Investigations. I gave them the info they needed, Olivia's devices, patterns, everything. Their team could access her laptop, phone, and tablet remotely. At the same time, I began restructuring our finances. Quietly, just in case. If I was wrong, no harm done. But if I was right, she wasn't going to steal from me while lying to my face and possibly using my savings to raise someone else's children. 2 weeks went by. Then a letter landed on my office desk. I locked my door, opened the envelope, and everything inside me shattered. DNA results confirmed it. Neither of the girls were mine. I cried. Hard. A day later, Elite handed me everything else. Audio, messages, GPS logs. Olivia had been sleeping with her blonde-haired, blue-eyed personal trainer for years. She was still seeing him twice a week. Sometimes she even brought the girls to his place. The recordings made it clear. They both knew he was the biological father. I met with my attorney the next afternoon. He suggested we slow down, maybe think it through. I said no. I told him to draw up the papers, but not to file them just yet. I wanted to time everything right. Over the next 2 months, I made myself legally invisible. 0 assets, no income, no shared accounts. I wasn't going to be their ATM. That weekend, my cousin Robert and his wife Laura came to town. Now here's where things get a little colorful. They really did visit me. They did apologize for what happened years ago. And yeah, I did forgive them. But let me add something I left out earlier. Laura's side of the family? They are not what you'd call law-abiding citizens. Let's just say they've got ties to some people who don't take betrayal lightly. Coincidentally, pure coincidence, I'm sure, about 2 days after their visit, a local personal trainer was jumped leaving his gym. The story made the evening news. 5 guys in ski masks beat him so bad that he ended up in the ICU. Broken jaw, cracked ribs, shattered arm, busted knee, even a testicle rupture. Cops called it a mugging. No arrests. The guy's car? Gone. Credit cards? Maxed. Bank accounts? Emptied. Identity? Stolen. He's looking at years of damage control. Olivia? She was moody for about a week after that. Said she was worried about the crime rate going up. I offered to upgrade our security, but she kept brushing it off. That Monday, I told my lawyer to go ahead and file everything. He advised me to tweak the settlement terms. I told him not to bother. I even told him to let her have the house. And the investments. Why? Because the investment accounts had been empty for over a month, and the house? If she kept it, she'd be stuck with the mortgage and bills. I had already moved most of my personal stuff out, some to a rental unit, the rest to Robert and Laura's ranch. The rental I picked? Registered under an offshore LLC, hard to trace. Just the way I needed it. Friday morning came. I went to the office like nothing was different. A few days earlier, Robert had helped me get my truck out there. I left my car behind, hopped in the truck, and went straight to the bank. Emptied all our accounts. Left $100 in each. Cleaned out the safety deposit box. Then I drove straight to the ranch and locked everything up tight. I swung back home around lunchtime. Checked Olivia's GPS. Yeah, I had a tracker on her car. She was at the mall. Perfect. I backed into the driveway, loaded up the last boxes I had left in the garage, grabbed the last of my clothes from our bedroom, and got the hell out of there. As I left, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia, probably confused why all her cards were being declined. The GPS showed her heading back toward the house. I tossed my phone on the table and walked away. 15 minutes after I reached my new apartment and had a cold beer in hand, my new phone rang. Only a handful of people had this number. It was the investigator. "She's been served," he said. "You'll have the video shortly." "Thanks," I replied, then hung up. 15 minutes later, the video hit my inbox. When the process server handed Olivia the divorce papers, the reaction was something else. A private investigator captured it all on video. She stood there, stunned, then dropped to the ground like someone had pulled her strings. The guy checked to make sure she was okay, and then left. What I wouldn't give to have seen the look on her face when she read through the documents and saw that I had DNA results and video proof of her affair. From there, everything crawled forward like molasses in January. I started getting messages from my old office. Olivia had been calling nonstop, demanding to talk to me. They told her I quit 2 weeks ago, but she would not believe it. Eventually, she stormed into the place and made such a scene the police had to be called in to escort her out. William, my cousin, reached out to her a couple of times. She caught on that he might have helped me and started grilling him for answers. Eventually, both my former workplace and William got restraining orders against her, and she backed off for a while. She had no income, just the cash in her purse and a couple $100s I left in our joint accounts. She leaned heavily on her parents for help. Meanwhile, I stayed under the radar, not taking on new business and making sure she had nothing left to grab. Eventually, she hired a lawyer, and settlement meetings were set up. I didn't attend a single one. I told my lawyer not to give her a dime. She didn't deserve it. Unsurprisingly, the meetings went nowhere. Everything ended up in arbitration. That's when things really went off the rails. Olivia demanded, "Where's all the money, you idiot?" I said, "What money? We are broke. I'm in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, the cheapest I could find, and I only got it because I know the landlord." All the accounts were empty. Our checking, savings, retirement, all wiped out. Investments? Gone. What I wanted to say was, the worst investment I ever made was you. But I held back. We handed her the house. Her name was on the deed. But the mortgage was nearly maxed out. No way I could afford the payments now. She screamed like someone had just told her the world was ending. Then came the demands. Child support? I told them they were not my kids. Spousal support? No job, no income, I could not pay. 70% of the cash? There was none. Half the business? I had sold it off already. Retirement funds? All cleaned out. Arbitration went up in flames. So we landed back in court with Judge Diana Thompson, probably the worst judge I could have pulled. She hated men, or at least it sure felt that way. Any hope I had was gone. Now, let me be real. If you think you can convince a judge like her that there is no money, you are dreaming. Sure, they could see the zeros in the accounts, but that didn't stop them from using those numbers to calculate how much I owed. I had taken careful steps to move everything. I physically took cash from one bank and spread it across multiple new accounts, all under names set up through Laura's cousins, who run a gag gift shop that, let's just say, makes very realistic fake IDs. I had one that said I was Jesus Christ. It even looked real, except for the small print that said, "For entertainment only." For an extra charge, they would leave that part off. Some of the funds I wired overseas, costly, traceable, and slow, but safer in the long run. By the time I was dragged back to court, I was already 60 days into my jail sentence, served in county, not state, since it was under 12 months. The judge glared at me. "Mr. Green, have you learned your lesson?" she said. "About not marrying someone who cheats?" "Learned that long ago," I answered. She looked ready to blow a gasket. "I was talking about your behavior in this courtroom." I gave her a look. "Ma'am, I've said what needed saying. You do not like my tone? That's on you. But maybe keep an eye on that blood pressure, before you burst a vein. She threatened to extend my time. I told her to go ahead. Then she asked about child support and alimony payments I had missed. I replied, well, seeing as you threw me in jail and cut off my ability to earn or move money, you might want to ask yourself how I was supposed to pay. You're being held in contempt, she said. So, now I get to stay even longer in jail while you complain I haven't paid you from jail? Makes perfect sense, I shot back. Another 30 days added. That made it a full 90. But honestly, jail wasn't that bad. The food sucked, sure, but I had a bed, time to work out, and no distractions. The other inmates respected me. Word of what I said to the judge spread fast. Even the guards laughed. Laura's family had a few connections too, which did not hurt. Only one problem. One of Olivia's dumber cousins thought it would be clever to get himself arrested and come into the jail to teach me a lesson. That plan lasted about 5 minutes. First, someone accidentally elbowed him playing catch in the yard. Then a basketball slipped and nailed him in the chest. Finally, when he came at me from behind to sucker punch me, I turned around and booted him straight in the groin. Down he went. 2 days in the infirmary. He refused to leave his cell after that. Back in court, Judge Thompson asked if I was ready to apologize. For what? I said, for your vile outburst. I still don't know what you mean, I shrugged. She scolded me for being uncivil. I said maybe another judge could take over, since she clearly had a personal grudge. She listed all the things I had failed to pay: support, maintenance, mortgage, utilities. I cannot pay anything while I'm locked up. I cannot earn a dime. And again, Your Honor, those are not my kids. When I said Olivia was the one who needed to pay for her own life, maybe even charge money for it, the courtroom gasped. Then Olivia's lawyer tried to claim I had hidden business funds. My client cannot access the business share, he said. Mr. Green sold it to an overseas buyer 2 months before filing. Just then, a sharp-looking woman in a power suit stood up and said she represented the company that bought the firm. We reject any claim from Mrs. Green, she said. This business was sold prior to the divorce, and we have no legal connection to the petitioner. When asked where the money went, she said it initially landed in Belgium, then was moved again. She had no idea where it went after that. Then Olivia's lawyer pointed out that she was about to lose the house, and her car had already been repossessed. She was working as a waitress now, barely scraping by, and her parents could not keep bailing her out. The judge turned to me again. You have 1 week to pay what you owe, or else. Great, I said. Why don't you tell me how to pull money out of thin air? She threatened more jail time. I laughed. You're keeping me locked up, where I cannot earn anything, and demanding I pay. That's insanity. 3 months later, the house was in foreclosure. Olivia's Lexus was gone. She moved back in with her parents, picking up shifts at a local diner. Her former lover, the personal trainer, was out of the hospital but was still limping through physical therapy and trying to sort out the massive financial mess that followed him like a shadow. The guy Olivia had been seeing? His life went downhill fast. His credit got wrecked, so he couldn't open any new cards. Since his car had the bare minimum insurance, and he only worked part-time at the gym, his hospital bills and out-of-pocket costs were sky-high. It was going to take him years just to dig himself out of that hole. Meanwhile, I finally convinced the court to let me out of jail on one condition. I had to find a job and start making payments. They also made me hand over my passport, calling me a flight risk and suspecting I had hidden money. They were not entirely wrong. I started working the line at Taco Bell and moved into the guest room at William and Laura's place out on their ranch. I knew I was under watch, but most of the money was already tucked away where no one could get to it. For 3 months, Olivia filed to garnish my minimum wage paycheck. She got pennies on the dollar, which I admit gave me a small amount of satisfaction. During this time, William and I finalized the rest of the plan. While I was still locked up, he had cleared out my apartment and spread my stuff across the extended family. Nobody caught on, since packages got passed around quietly during cookouts and backyard parties. My daily routine was simple: go to work, go back to the ranch, and keep my head down. I made sure not to draw attention. At some point, Taco Bell had to file a restraining order against Olivia because she kept showing up causing problems. A quiet little envelope to the manager made sure I kept my job. Now, about my lawyer. Remember the woman who represented the firm that bought my business? I started meeting with her regularly. At some point, I hired her to handle my legal stuff full-time. Let me tell you, She was sharp as a blade and tougher than a junkyard dog. We met out by the pool most days. I know it's not exactly traditional lawyer-client protocol, but sometimes you need someone who gets things done, not someone stuck on formalities. Ethics. Those are just expensive paintings in a courtroom, far as I'm concerned. Now, as for my finances, yes, I sold my company. No, I didn't sell it to myself. I sold it to a firm overseas to keep Olivia from getting even a dime. The second I deposited any of that money in a U.S. bank, she'd be all over it. So I didn't. Everything stayed beyond U.S. jurisdiction, far out of her reach. In total, after all was said and done, I had around $10 million, some of it from selling the firm, some from years of investments. I kept about $200,000 in cash in various spots, old bank accounts, safe deposit boxes, even under floorboards. I'd used about $50,000 by this point, so there was still plenty left on hand. But I didn't plan on holding onto the cash forever. I had one last play to make. It all kicked off on a warm, sunny Saturday. William and Laura hosted a huge barbecue out at the ranch. Family came in from all over. We had music, ribs, burgers, you name it. Amanda, my lawyer, was there too, working the crowd like she was born for it. Late in the afternoon, one of Laura's uncles came up to me, thanked me for everything, then quietly slipped me an envelope. I handed it to Amanda without a word. That evening, after everyone had eaten and had a few drinks, I stood up and made an announcement. The ranch was officially paid off. William and Laura now owned it free and clear. The crowd erupted. We partied long into the night. A bit later, Amanda pulled me aside and said she had an early flight the next morning. She had already packed her things in her rental car and left quietly with a few other guests. Nobody thought anything of it. What they didn't notice was the man who got out of the back of her car in the airport parking garage, or the man who walked a few steps behind her through the terminal. David Green couldn't leave the country. His passport was held by the court. But Mitchell Johnson had no such restriction. No one questioned the couple holding hands as they boarded their first-class flight to Mexico City. Amanda White never made it to her connecting flight, but a woman named Erica Johnson did, alongside Mitchell. 2 days later, a couple by the name of Greg and Emma Cooper checked into a hacienda on the coast of Costa Rica. The guy bore a strong resemblance to me, and the truck parked out front looked a lot like the one that vanished from Williams Ranch. Back in the States, about 2 weeks after the barbecue, a bench warrant was issued for my arrest. Taco Bell fired me for not showing up to work. Olivia hadn't received a single payment since, and she was panicking. William and Laura were called into court, but their lawyer had a slick answer for everything. They claimed I'd just rented a room, paid my bills, and one day drove off. They even filed a lawsuit against me for missed rent. Sure, the court didn't fully buy it, but there was no hard evidence to the contrary. Meanwhile, life in Costa Rica was peaceful. I started a small charter fishing business, and Emma ran a cozy cantina by the beach. Our hacienda was one of the nicer spots in the area, and we had family come visit often, Robert, Laura, and others. Most nights, we either had guests over or went out into the community. We helped when we could and donated where it mattered. People accepted us. Life was quiet, full of sunsets, ocean breezes, and grilled snapper. I got back into stocks and helped some of the locals open accounts. It felt good to use my skills for something positive. Maybe karma was paying me back a little. And Judge Thompson? Well, life has a way of evening things out. A few years after I disappeared, her wife, who always seemed to hate men even more than she did, left her. For a man. Not just any man, either. The guy had been part of their friend group. She took the house, got the judge to pay alimony and child support for kids Thompson had adopted during the marriage. Just to twist the knife, she moved the boyfriend into the house immediately. Rumor has it they are waiting until the youngest finishes college to get married, 1 week after Judge Thompson's financial obligations end. Funny how life works out sometimes.